What's a champion of the light to do in a land where the sun has been replaced by shadowy monstrosities, immortal undead generals, and hordes of nasty ne'er-do-wells of all sorts? Well, this hero doesn't have much of a choice but to push back against the dark, burn away the armies that get in his way, find ways to shine even brighter, and maybe, just maybe, heal the land and let the sun shine once more. Can it be done? Well, we've got one way to find out. On to the video. At last, Midas Goldcrest arrives in the second act of his journey, the Shadow-Cursed Lands, a place he's sure Lathander wants him to heal. But before we go too far in, we cast protection from evil and good, mainly because we're worried about the evil part. Sure enough, we encounter some Harpers with a general good life advice just down the road, and as we step out from behind cover to introduce ourselves, Harper Jonas gets jumped by a shadowy specter, turned into one in his own right, and our first fight kicks off. We get a chance to watch our improved warding flare completely fail, then we use our Radiance of the Dawn to kill one shadow and almost slaughter most of the rest. Though some nasty hits do come towards both our allies and ourselves, our Holy Lance Helm sheds some light on the situation, making this even easier. A Harper thins down the herd, and we get to blast out another Radiance, taking out two more. When it's back to the enemies, Jonas obliterates himself against our helmet, and the remaining shadows do their best, but it's becoming pretty clear that this is not going their way. After a couple more rounds and a couple meaty hits, we show them that Lathander different. Our new allies, seeing how valuable Midas would be in this dark, tell us about a safe haven nearby. Indeed, just down the road we find the Last Light Inn, rather poorly named as wherever Midas is, there will never be a Last Light. Regardless, as we try to enter, the legendary druid Jaheira shows up to bind us in a few roots because she thinks we're a chosen of the absolute. Thankfully, Maul from the Tiefling Grove is here to vouch for us, and Jaheira mentions she's quite literally been praying for us to show up, which certainly means we're alright by Jaheira, and if we're alright by Jaheira, we are alright by Quartermaster Tally, who sells us the Cloak of Protection, a cloak that gives +1 to both our AC and saving throws. But that's not all. As we explore the grounds, in the basement we find the Coruscation Ring, making it so whenever we deal spell damage while illuminated, which is always, we also inflict Radiating Orb for 2 turns, stacking them even faster. Now that we've gotten the lay of the land, we return to Jaheira and have a quick truth serum filled drink to earn her trust. As the conversation continues, we learn at last of General Ketheric Thorm, the leader of the Absolutists, and an immortal warrior returned from the dead who is now invincible. Well, we're pretty sure we can take him out somehow, especially with Jaheira's idea of infiltrating the towers posing as a true soul. She also tells us that we're not the only star in this dark sky. Isabel, a cleric of our old friend Selune, is just upstairs and ready to give a blessing. Not all feels right as we approach though. A warning from our god encourages us to precast both our Guardians and Sanctuary on Isabel. We have a brief, fun, cleric-filled chat with our fellow god touch and get the blessing from her to progress through the shallower parts of the Shadow Curse. With Selune and the Morning Lord working together, the darkness doesn't stand a chance. That is at least the working theory until Marcus shows up to rain on our parade, bringing with him a host of fiends as his attempt to kidnap Isabel kicks off. Starting off, he hits us with a little bit of a suck before running into our Guardians and immediately slipping. So we blast him and one fiend with a sunbeam, summon our spiritual weapon to help out, and pass the turn to our enemies, who mostly fly around focusing on everyone else in the inn, but one does also fly up to us, only to hit the spiritual weapon, who's still in fine enough shape to whack Marcus in the dome and get him seeing lights. The Selenite herself goes out of her way to break her sanctuary, but at least pops us back up to full health. Especially nice since Marcus immediately bonks us back down to half health before falling prone as we start our turn yet again. Most of the danger is dealt with though, as we fireball him and the Winged Horror up here to oblivion, triggering Bloodlust, letting our champ turn Isabel invisible to keep her safe. From here, we've just got to clean up the Winged Horrors while hoping not too many of our allies go gentle into that good night. Rest in peace, Roland. Thankfully, with the whole inn working together and Midas spewing sunlight like his life depends on it, Roland is the only casualty we face this go around. And now that we've got our brilliant blessing, we're free to talk to Harper Branthos, who's readying an ambush on a cultist convoy with means to travel the Deep Curse. We do get a little bit lost along the way to the ambush site and instead ambush the wrong group of wicked wrongdoers. Just a small group of miscreant measles waiting in the dark for waylaid wanderers. Unfortunately for them, they are melee only enemies who really struggle to get close to us, and when they do, they inevitably miss thanks to our radiating orbs. Some even jump directly into their death when they've had enough of the torture that is fighting Midas, and the remainders get seared to a crisp before too long. Right behind them, we find the Luminous Gloves in the chest, which makes it so whenever we deal radiant damage, we also apply 2 more turns of radiating orbs. At first, we use these somewhat interchangeably with our Gloves of Belligerent Skies, but we do eventually settle on using the Luminous Gloves. As we work our way back towards the cultist convoy, we feel the presence of shadows lurking just beyond the light, so to invite them to a purging, we break these torches and out pops some cursed canines, who just get absolutely shredded. Once again, these are melee attack only enemies, meaning they just run into our guardians, gain 1 million radiating orbs, get incinerated by channel divinities, and eventually die just via missing us. Then we last catch up to our Harper friends where they're lying in wait ready to pounce on a wicked god's vile abomination. Said abomination leaps into action and we're immediately averting crises. Then when it gets to us, we run next to the cronies to blast him with a sunbeam while summoning our spiritual weapon. The friends we've made along the way, well, a treasure indeed, are kind of awful. They get shredded by a cloud of daggers, set on fire by a goblin, generally need to be babysat like crazy, and eventually just start burning to death. Back on our turn, we even up the playing field a bit more with a Radiance of the Dawn alongside running next to any and all who are close enough. Thankfully, our allies seize the initiative, taking out 1 more, and our enemies fail to do the same in any meaningful way. Though Midas likewise fails to follow suit with a failed cantrip. Thankfully, our buddies take out the last goon for us, and now if we're counting the spiritual weapon, it is a 5v1, turning this into an absolute stomp fest since wouldn't you know it, Karnas is a melee only enemy, so he too falls victim to the loop of whiffing attacks and falling prone, only to get absolutely blended. The one time he does try and walk away, he completely fails since Spirit Guardians is difficult terrain and all his movement gets used just standing up. Not to mention the odd time he spends his entire turn standing up. The poor Drider never stood even a fraction of a chance. From his corpse, we find their means of protection, a pixie-fueled moon lantern capable of staving off even the deepest parts of the curse. Of course, all light is meant to flow freely, so we let the pixie go, and in return, she gives us the relatively permanent ability to avoid the curse in all its power. And as we journey around the lands a bit more, we bump into a boatload of birds who are a wee bit shy of the sun. Shortly afterwards, we continue down the road and find ourselves at Moonrise Towers, where we can feel the evil emanating from all around. It's especially noticeable as we enter the main hall and find the goblins from the wilderness begging for their lives, though General Ketheric Thorm doesn't see the merit in keeping them alive. The sentiment, however, does appear to be mutual. Death, though, certainly is not, as it seems to stick a lot more to the goblins than our immortal general, who quickly saunters off afterwards, no doubt to commune with his ghastly god, leaving us to deal with the remaining goblins who clearly would much rather go out on their own terms. Then our magnificent minister heads upstairs to have a quick chat with the right-hand lady Zarel, who very quickly comes to trust us as we ask her to show what she's capable of, to which she kills her own bodyguard. If only all of our opponents were so incredibly incompetent. She even proceeds to tell us of an incredibly important relic Ketheric wants somewhere beneath his ancestral family mausoleum. Gee, I wonder what that could be. Now that we know where the source of his immortality likely is, we set out to first find a way to lift the curse from this land, starting by stumbling across Gary and Goth, who immediately squares up against us when we don't give them as much gold as they would like. First thing we do is get Spirit Guardians going, effectively neutralizing this melee-only enemy, then run past our goons up onto the roof where we feel a bit safer closer to the sky. Unfortunately, the sidekick skulls can outrange our guardians, so we take the odd hit here and there, but most just dash into our spell, doing nothing else. So when it switches over to Midas, we're free to use a Radiance, taking out 1, blasting away 100 of Gary's HP in the process before skedaddling further away. Rinse and repeat next turn, and we finish off the remaining ones too, which should set our foe's max HP to 7, but the darkness here is so powerful that it's at 207 instead, which means we've just got to slowly whittle away at them as they whiff their attacks against us over and over, almost get turned into a golden statue like we're in the Myth of Midas, break up out of it a moment later, move a distance away so as to not make the same mistake twice in a row, and finish the job after way too many turns. Since it's clear there's a bunch of thorns lurking around the place, we pivot our near goal to purging them, and along the way we get in another fight in the center of town. It's just a small group of run-of-the-mill undead which are really no danger. The only way they can damage us is with a strength drain, but that just shows how bad Midas is at keeping concentration. Either way, with the Bower of the Sun in the palm of his hand, the shadows are obliterated with the regular old shambling zombies following suit with a fireball and some measly cantrips, giving us free passage towards the hospital where we find the next thorn, a certain deadly Dr. Malice, in the midst of doing what any Sharan doctor would do, hurting instead of healing. He even goes so far as to insult the light of his poor victim's eyes, so Midas, absolutely enraged, gets into a theological debate with the sickening Sharan and manages to turn his own teachings against him, resulting in the doctor having his nurses practice their cruel craft on him. Just like that, another thorn is down for the count. And off his corpse we grab a loot with a peculiar light noting its presence. Regardless, we find the last monstrous thorn, Thizabald, waiting for us at the local tavern. And while the brew looks worse for our stomach than what just happened to Malice, we still do our best to down it and tell stories to the big man, since his stomach looks like it'll burst open if we just keep him drinking. Sure enough, our divine blessed blood makes our hero a drinking champ. Evil could never defeat the Morning Lord, not even in a drinking contest. To reward us, our god blesses us with even more power in the form of level 7, granting with it 4th level spell slots with bangers such as Death Ward and Wall of Fire. Death Ward is basically an extra last stand, which is obviously really good, only problem is I forget to cast it pretty much every day. And Wall of Fire is situationally another very good damaging use of our concentration, though rarely as good as Spirit Guardians, especially since mostly we'll just be using these slots to upcast said Guardians. Since the Thorn family is no longer haunting the town, we take a brief pit stop back at the last light and find a flaming fist humming a tune in his sleep. To try and break him out of his trance, Midas shreds it on the loot like he did back when he performed in his old church band. The moment the man wakes up, he tells us of Thaniel, a boy who embodies the spirit of the land trapped in the Shadowfell, who can only be freed by Halcyon. So we grab our druidic roadie and get him ready to set up a ritual, and while he gets ready, we do the same, summoning a couple ice mephits, a water elemental, our loyal friend Scratch, and a cold glyph of warding. Things kick off as Halcyon jumps inside a portal to rescue the boy, and shadows start pouring out the wazoo to destroy it. First up, we down a speed potion, cast Spirit Guardians, and fire off a darkness arrow to block the enemy's sightlines to the portal. Thankfully, the first round passes pretty simply as our summons get whacked and whack the enemies in return, with our glyph blowing up some of the approaching horde. Before you know it, it's back to us where we blast the growing horde with radiance, triggering a bloodless elixir fueled ice storm and finishing off with a guiding bolt on a wraith alongside our spiritual weapon. Our summons keep up the good work, though unfortunately our last method goes down and the enemies dashing towards us are smart enough to skirt around the ice. Either way, our guardians finish off the wraith and a sunbeam shows maybe it's not a bad thing the enemies are moving single file past the difficult terrain. A fireball only cements this line of thinking, and with our final action we blast another guiding bolt before refreshing our speed potion. Of course, with both our spells and our summons, we're prioritizing any enemies who get close, which isn't made any easier by the fact the ice is glitched and the DC for our enemies to fall prone is 3, meaning a lot of them get way closer than we're comfortable with, but a Radiance of the Dawn and Spirit Guardians clean out most of them. A darkness arrow on the portal again ensures the archers won't shoot it, and a cone of cold finishes off a few more. One by the portal didn't get cleaned up by Midas, but Scratch is here to save the day. No more enemies are spawning at this point, and the stragglers do worse than nothing on their turns, leaving us to fry a few more back on our turn, and the following round, Halcyon returns with a boy in his hand as the shadows dissipate. Only problem is he's still got a corrupted missing half lurking somewhere in the Shadowcurse lands, so we set out looking for that bit too. On the bright side, he's not too far from where we are. Just down the road, in fact, we find Oliver, who teleports away after we try to convince him to come with us, kindly leaving behind a portal for us to follow, but before we do, we down a Peerless Focus Elixir and precast our usual. Immediately after we step in, we get blasted by Daddy. Oliver summons a bunch of lacking lookalikes, and Mummy, unable to sing her lullaby thanks to our elixir, just runs at Midas. Whenever we move too close to an enemy, Oliver's legendary action triggers, dealing lingering necrotic damage, but it's nothing we can't tank with some healing potions. Meaning for this fight, we we run around trying to hit as many enemies as possible, blast them all with radiance repeatedly, make sure to watch out for the spooky owlbear, and when we run out of radiances, switch over to the tried and true fireball. Just a bit longer of enemies swinging and missing and running into our guardians is all it takes to make Oliver's barrier fall down and a conversation strike up. Turns out the kid is just nervous, thinking this rebirth of his will make his other half not want him, but a priest of the Morning Lord knows that each dawn carries memories of the day before and is all the more beautiful for it. Just like that, Oliver agrees to rejoin Daniel, which means it's at last time to get working on the last part of this.
Ketheric Thorm must die.
That is, of course, after we obliterate a few more shadows in the basement of the Mason's Guild, grab a fun little knock scroll, and then head to the Thorm Mausoleum, where Raphael himself is once again waiting with what he thinks is a charming rhyme. In actuality, it is no doubt some trick to get us to do his dirty work in typical devil fashion. So we tell him we'll be seeing him on our own terms soon enough. Inside the mausoleum proper, we find a hidden passageway after clicking a few buttons, leading unfortunately to a wicked Sharon gauntlet laying beneath. An invisible wall blocks our path to the button we need to enter, but Lathander's light guides us by first having us approach from the east and then the south, granting entry to the rest of the gauntlet, where in the very first room a clandestine cloaker lies in wait, one that Midas sneaks up on first, kicking things off with, you guessed it, Spirit Guardians. It immediately spits out a whole bunch of clones, one of which frightens us at the first chance it gets. Being frightened isn't too annoying, except for the fact that we can't walk towards the main cloaker now, so we're left using ranged spells and praying it walks into us. Since it kindly obliges, things speed up, even more so thanks to a crit hit from our spiritual weapon, which really ruins the monstrosity's morale if its last actions are anything to go by. Next room over, we find skeletons, no doubt being controlled by Ketheric's necromancer we were sent after, Balthazar. But before we can chat too much, the room starts shaking and quaking, and out pops undead justiciars alongside portals that will summon even more of them. And not so fun fact, they apparently don't get blasted by Sunbeam, as Speedbot fueled Guiding Bolt works just fine though. Of course, even with us targeting them, more portals spawn alongside more Sharons, all of whom have Radiant Retort, which is why we don't have Spirit Guardians or the Holy Lance Helm on. At least our shield still knocks them prone in conjunction with Reverberation. The rounds get spent by Midas blasting as many umbral tremors as he can, all the various undead slowly whacking each other, and more portals and bad guys spawning. Eventually, we get blasting the actual enemies, and the last of our allies goes down, leaving us by our lonesome right as our speedbot runs out too. Not that we're really all that worried, since protection from evil and good keeps us safe from almost all of their attacks. But of course, when the first hit does land, our concentration instantly breaks. Well, that's okay, we were planning on switching over to Wall of Fire anyways, roasting and toasting any and all who saunter through it with the help of our fire acuity hat that we picked up earlier, alongside a few well-placed fireballs incinerating the others that make it past. And when we inevitably run out of spell slots, a cloud kill scroll gets used up to bring us home over the last couple rounds. Once everyone's out of the way, we're free to meet the bloated Balthazar face to face, who almost instantly blows our cover by detecting our divine touch. Thankfully, he doesn't put two and two together and instead tells us the super duper important relic is nearby before sending us on our way. We'll get to him soon, don't worry, but first we feel a powerful infernal presence nearby that needs some purging. With renewed resources, we sneak up on the Orthon Urgir, blasting him and his cronies with a sunbeam from behind, earning a surprise round on his goons alongside a pile of bombs dropped in our face. And wait, we can talk about this. It's okay, Lathander's got our back and we're in the fight again a moment later, healing up with a potion and casting Spirit Guardians. Next turn, Urgir simply goes invisible, effectively wasting it due to our Guardians, and Midas hits the old Resplendent Radiance to add insult to injury. Even though we've got our usual gear back on, we do still take the occasional hit as we get surrounded by the myriad monstrous Maragons. And to give us a bit of a heart attack, Urgir marks us with his legendary action before throwing another pile of bombs at our feet, this time deciding not to instantly blow them up. The Radiance of the Dawn next round triggers the prior mentioned legendary action, dealing a good chunk but clearing out room for us to heal up and walk away from the bomb's blast radius. At this point, our guardians are working in full force, mowing down folks every turn as we walk through them. Your gear can't hit us for his life, and with no more bombs to worry about one-shotting us, we use a speed potion to kill him even faster. A Soul Displacer Beast is the only remaining creature that could be a threat, but they're melee only, and you know how that tends to go. Once they're cleared out of the way, we see some rats acting rather oddly, and arguably more importantly find an Umbral Gem, no doubt a part of Shar's tricksome games that we will not be taking part in. But that's for later. For now, we head back towards Balthazar and decide to crack open the vault door next to him, wherein we find the Callous glow ring, letting us deal an extra 2 radiant damage to any enemy that is fully illuminated whenever we deal damage, replacing our Crusher's ring. Unfortunately, as we explore more, we find some more Sharans with an Umbral Tremor that silences spells, but we can just blast it from on high and give the Justiciars a similar searing experience as the last ones we fought. Not all Justiciars have been dealt with though. As we go to investigate the rats, one lonesome one mysteriously spawns and we sense the taint of Shar on it. So naturally we obliterate it and a whole horde come following after it, all of whom spawn and run to our spirit guardians faster than we can even see them coming, causing the very last rat to turn into the last Justiciar and the only living one we've encountered. He starts doing whatever the hell this is as a defensive maneuver, but even his wicked forbidden magics prove no match for Midas in the long run. Since we've cleared out all the Justiciars we can, we use the one Umbral Gem we acquired to get to the bottom of this place and the Nox Scroll we picked up earlier to skip whatever trials the evil god intended for us. Then we step into the dark and ominous portal that swallows all light at the bottom, and sure enough, it swallows our light too. When we wake, we see a massive prison and we sense a light not even the Shadowfell could quench waiting for us in its depths. Unfortunately, Balthazar swoops in to try and get there first, so we race him down and a fight kicks off. He goes first and immediately blasts us with a brutal ray of sickness, but our precasted spirit guardians kills a goon, triggering bloodlust, letting us use our radiance before dashing closer to Balthazar and healing. All of his skeleton buddies are just food in a blender as they approach the spirit guardians, and for some reason the big man just spends his turn hopping away. Of course, we hop right after him on our turn, blast the battlefield with our second radiance, and nuke some of the stragglers with a fireball. I think at this point the cronies just kind of gave up and started seeing if they could do tricks as they die to our guardians. The Balthmeister blasts us with a cloud kill instead of following suit, even breaking our concentration. So we decide to mix things up, taking the opportunity to cast a wall of fire, which doesn't stop the skeletons from doing cool trick jumps as they die. Still, this nuisance of a necromancer continues to break our concentration, so we settle for whittling him down bit by bit. We are relatively safe from danger at this point, so long as we remember to always heal up, and before too long, both Balthazar and his few remaining minions get blasted to the great beyond, letting us do our pal Selune one more solid and free her daughter from Ketheric's enslavement, ending his immortality in the process. Yes, indeed, just like that, Dame Aelin, our newest celestial comrade, is reborn and is ready to join us in the fight against Ketheric. And wouldn't you know it, for freeing her daughter, Selune convinces Lathander to juice us up to level 8, giving potent spellcasting, letting us add our wisdom modifier to our cantrip's damage for a bit more oomph. Alongside our second feat, Warcaster, which grants advantage on all of our concentration saves, ensuring we keep Spirit Guardians up even more, plus it also lets us cast Shocking Grasp as an opportunity attack. At last, we're ready to raid Moonrise, alongside our many allies that we've made, and as the fight kicks off, the little lackeys lying in wait pepper our front lines. We charge into the midst of them with our guardians, unleashing a Radiance of the Dawn. Jaheira does basically nothing at all, and Zarel unleashes a black hole, slowing a whole lot of us in the process, setting us up for a brutal smite from a paladin, instantly breaking our concentration even despite our newest feat, while our backline gets blinded by a hungry Hadar. Back on Midas's turn, we simply heal up and recast our guardians, and this round goes much the same as the last one, with our side looking like lambs to the slaughter, Jaheira included. To continue the bad news, our light is once again quenched by a 1 damage bolt to the face, making us wonder if Warcaster is even working. Right afterwards, Zarel goes and we fail a wisdom save to her spell, turning us fearful, which just really shouldn't happen. At least we've managed to stack enough radiating orbs to make most of the enemies enemies miss us. Plus, even though we can't do much but watch now as our allies die, our movement does autopath us into killing enemies passively, which isn't a big consolation as the friends we made along the way are now old corpses. Another round of autopilot goes on by with the death toll racking up incredibly impressively for us not lifting a finger. When we finally get in control of our actions again, we wade into the midst of our foes to blast them with our second Radiance, then finish off Zarel with our Fire Breath, which summons reinforcements. Thankfully, they don't get to do anything this round, so on our next turn we use a flying potion to zip up to the high ground and blast an adept with Scorching Rays to build up radiating orbs. We have been getting peppered from the folks on the rafters all throughout this fight, but the really scary hits come from the Warden at this point. Keeping up our Scorching Rays from on high to ensure that most of our enemies miss their attacks, we are pretty safe however. Unfortunately, the same might not be said for Quartermaster Tally, who decides to join the fight rather late. Seeing that our favorite shopkeep might get murdered, we speed up the pressure, but so do our dastardly opponents. Tally herself ain't going down without swinging either. Before they get another chance to harm her, our guardians get the Warden, we fly down into the enemy midst, blast them with a Cone of Cold, followed up with a Fireball thanks to Bloodlust, and even use a speed potion to Sacred Flame another to death, leaving just one foe who instantly slips on the ice we made. Our guardians are out and we've got to work fast, so we spend our next turn double Sacred Flaming, but it's not enough and Tally sadly gets blasted in the face and is perfectly fine. Rip Bozo. 'Twas a bit of a rough fight, but hey, at least Tally is here to pick over the corpses. There's a few more folks for us to blast to bits upstairs, but they really don't take too long. We even have enough time to pop a potion of flying and run up to the roof with our existing guardians from that fight still active. Cleric ain't feeling too hot now that he can't rely on a stolen god's blessing, and now that Midas is here, Aelin lands, drops a truth bomb on Cleric, and our showdown begins. With Aelin immediately getting smote. But then it's Midas's turn, and we zip into the midst of this foul assemblage, blast him with a Radiance, then follow up with a spiritual weapon. Sestera the Necromancer does, however, blast us with a Fireball, triggering Kethric's legendary action, which also blasts us. Then we immediately lose concentration to one of the needling Necromites. At least a few others get knocked down when they miss us, which actually is kind of a bad thing because they turn into these skeletal cocoons which hatch before we get a turn and explode upon doing so, getting us low enough for Cleric to smite both Aelin and us into our death. But Lathander's got our back, and when we recast Spirit Guardians, Cleric gets knocked prone, our Bloodlust triggers on a Necromite, letting us use a Sunbeam on Sestera, and we heal up with a potion. The Necromancer gets her revenge with another Fireball, and Papa Thorm spends his turn sauntering on over. All we need to finish off this foul defiler of the dead is Scorching Rays. All it takes for the Thorn Patriarch is a Fireball to the face and some Spirit Guardians to the knees to send him straight into a cutscene. But the wicked deity that is the Absolute proves itself at its most powerful in cutscenes, knocking out Aelin once more and teleporting both Cleric and Aelin somewhere deep underground where the sun can't reach. The Necromites at least are easy to send back to an eternal rest, and it sure ain't hard to find the giant pit we need to jump into to track down the Absolute's general either, landing us right in the middle of an Illithid colony, which is chock full of roaming intellect devourers for us to slaughter, a small horde of undead to absolutely melt into puddles, and a bit of a puzzle to solve that rewards us with a brain in a jar that we can plug into this here machine, letting us talk to it via a disembodied head. They are begging for us to purge them from this plane after ages of suffering as a toy for the Illithids, and naturally we oblige. In the process, they grant us the Githzerai Mind Barrier permanent buff, which gives advantage on all intelligence saving throws. We also find a room full of pods containing both Mind Flayers and their victims, one of whom is our old friend Zevlor. So naturally, we let him out of containment, and it is just a straight up slaughterhouse for these poor Illithids. I almost start to feel bad for them with how viciously outmatched they are. Almost. Unfortunately, they don't want to join us in the fight against the evil god that's orchestrated all their suffering, cause, well, I guess they have somewhere more important to be. Now, finally, we've tracked down Cleric, and we do a bit of prep, starting by upcasting A to give us more max HP, summoning both Scratch and a couple of ice methods using a scroll, and downing a heroism elixir. Then we descend to the depths of this place and catch a glimpse of Kethric's buddies Orin and Gortash, alongside a view of the true Absolute, an Elder Brain, no god at all. In fact, it turns out our true enemies are the Dead Three, wicked gods that serve as a foil to our Lord of Light. Either way, the other two chosen of the Dead Three vanish, leaving just Cleric and ensuring that at least he will die today. We throw down a flying potion for our canine companion and ourselves, then douse everyone in invis potions so we can sneakily fly into position mission. To start things off, we blast the Mind Flayer with some Scorching Rays, earning ourselves a surprise round and a Yap attack from Merkel's Chosen, but whatever his reasoning is, he's gotta go, so the fight resumes. Scratch immediately frees Aelin from her imprisonment, and our two methods get into combat by piling on the Illithid, letting us use a speed potion to finish them off with Spirit Guardians. Then we fly down into the Intellect Devourers to weaken them before stopping in front of the K-Man himself. Our god-blessed buddy gets finishing off the Devourers, while Cleric, thanks to Radiating Orbs and Reverb, just misses a couple times before falling prone. Since he's not a concern while he's stuck on the ground, we fly up to his Necromites to damage them and blast the head honcho with a few Sacred Flames. The goons in general really are no concern for this fight at all, though in their defense, neither are our goons. Pretty quickly, it's just the old man laying on the floor by his lonesome, while Dame Aelin and Midas work together to blast him into another cutscene, wherein, even if we don't like him or agree with him, we can admire a man willing to sacrifice his life in service of his god. Unfortunately for us, that god uses his sacrifice to manifest a piece of his power and very much so wants to kill us. Fortunately though, said god really can't hit us thanks to all the Radiating Orbs, so the fight kinda just becomes our guardians taking him down while we blast him and he swings and whiffs at us. His legendary action does occasionally frighten us inside his Bone Chill aura, which can be spooky, but so long as we keep him blinded with darkness arrows, we can stop him from getting too many chances to do that. Once he gets low enough health, he does start chomping down on the Necromites he summons, healing in the process. Which is honestly a little rude, because he can't damage us enough to make us worried, but we can't outdamage his healing either. Meaning we just gonna have to watch and do the best damage we can as he slowly but surely eats the Necromites, causing fewer and fewer to spawn each time until he eventually runs out. Then it's just a matter of whittling him down bit by bit with our favorite spell, emphasis on the bit, thanks to his damage reduction that comes from the armor Cleric was wearing. Don't ask me how that one works. Till eventually the first of the dead three have their machinations dealt with and the material plane is all the more free for it. After defeating him, we get level 9, granting 5th level spell slots, aka even stronger Spirit Guardians, alongside some cool spells like Destructive Wave for even more whopping AoE damage. Plus, Aelin wakes up to get some sweet revenge, reunite with Isabel, who as it turns out is her girlfriend, which makes Selune's favor of her really click into place for Midas, and they ask to join us in our journey to the big city. A request our Luminous Cleric happily acquiesces to as we finally set out of these shadow-cursed lands. Yet as we're leaving, we realize they'll have to come up with a new name for this place, and awfully quickly too, as a well-earned new day rises and the long journey to Baldur's Gate doesn't seem so long anymore. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, Act 2 went pretty smooth, all things considered. I was really expecting Radiant Retort to be more of a problem, so thank Lathander, light clerics get fire spells too. And as always, a special thanks to our Storyteller tier members here on YouTube: Okankan, Mark Rainbow, Beltfed Joe, Lumina, El Guardia, Zaplight25, Ramon Standalone, Witch Amy, Shmentai Neko, and Miku.